Hey there again, hope you're doing well.
Hello everyone. I'm hoping that your stint in the darkness has given you some time to compose yourselves. I hope everyone has a tissue and sort of sorted out. Now, would you please join me in welcoming the wonderful cast and crew of the film that we have with us tonight. First up, please give a very warm welcome to screenwriter Rebecca Lenkiewicz. We have author Raynor Winn. I thought I'd start off on pair to talk to all of you, and then I thought, I'd like to read the book, and I'm sure it'll be a nice way to kind of get through my morning commute. So for the last week, every day, I've been sitting on the 38 bus and sobbing my eyes out. I mean, I think your story is already so wonderful and moving and funny. You inject this real humor into it, but you're also an incredibly gifted storyteller. You're working with great material, but so much of it is you. I would love for you to tell us a little bit about how this adventure went from a collection of notes that you had to a bestseller to the film that we've all just seen tonight.
I love the idea that you salted on the bus. I wrote this book for Moth because we were in a strange time after the walk, and he was starting to lose his memories of that incredibly powerful time in our lives. So every evening in the tent, he'd written little notes in the margins of Piccadilly's guidebook, and I started to just write those up. But I thought, no, that doesn't capture the walk, doesn't capture the feeling. And so I started to write it as a narrative, so that when he read it, he would feel as if he was there, right there on the path next to me. And then I printed it off on a home printer. I remember it started out black and it ended up pink as it ran out of ink. And I tied it up with string, and it was gave it to him for his birthday. And that's all it was going to be, was just a memory for him. But then my daughter read it, as kids do, before he did, and said, Mum, it's not bad, you should do something with it. And I thought she meant put it in a file, because what else could I do with it? But then eventually it was a book, and then a few people read it, and then it became a film, and the whole journey is as if...
A lovely piece of material to start with. And then Rebecca, I think you've just been given the book as a gift quite recently when you got the call as well. I'd love if both of you could talk about the time that you spent sort of between reading the book and discovering it, and then putting the script together. I think it evolved over quite a while.
Sure, yeah. Rebecca, do you want to talk first?
I received it from my mother initially, and it was my birthday, and but there are other things, but the real gift is this book. It will change your life. And every week she said, have you read it yet? Have you read it? I will. And then I did read it, and it absolutely did change my life. And I was on the phone to her sobbing and saying, it's beautiful, Mum, thank you. And so that was wonderful. And then probably a year later, Marianne and Liz Carlson, who I'd worked with before on Colette, they approached me, and Marianne's, a legend in theatre, and we'd known each other off and on, through theatre. So it was a very organic, yes, this is amazing. And then we just spent time together with it, a lot of time just thinking about story and really just about the essence. You can't put a book on screen, but we talked a lot about which encounters were important, but mainly just about the heart of the piece. I think we all felt from the beginning that silence would be there, and the landscape was very much a character, and that we wanted to talk about homelessness. And that was where we started from, wasn't it, Marianne?
Yeah, I definitely remember having lots of meetings with people saying, so I think there are three characters in the story. There's Ray, and there's Moth, and then there's nature. People looking at me going, how are you going to do that?
So it's a three-hander.
It's a three-hander. And I think we chose Rebecca specifically because she is very, very sparse in the dialogue that she uses in her films.
and I didn't want it to just be a kind of a straight book to film. I wanted it to have its own kind of personality, I suppose. And actually, Raynor said to me very early on, in a really generous way, she said, it's yours and it's a different genre and you need to find your own way with it, which was wonderful because it's a lot of responsibility doing the story of these two incredible, true people.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, that brings me very elegantly to you, Jason, and your experience with portraying Moth. I mean, there are always so many complexities to playing a real person and trying to capture part of someone's story. I think a real added complexity and depth to this role, though, is that Moth is going on such an emotional journey, but also a real physical journey. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your approach to representing that on screen, maybe getting to meet with him and talk with him as well.
Yeah, well, Moth's here.
I didn't want to call him out.
No, he doesn't want to talk. And he was amazingly generous. So generally, I've played real life people quite a few times before. I've never played anybody nice. So that was a whole new experience for me. And my experience has always been that real life people, you get a much more accurate picture when you speak to other people about them. People, which of us can describe ourselves well, perfectly. So that technically, I wanted to know everything about his illness, everything about what it did on the outside to him, as much as he could remember, as much as Ray could help me with, because we obviously shot film out of sequence. But I wanted to know how it felt, and I couldn't get that from other people. And Moth he stunned me with his honesty and his ability to understand what he'd been going through, and the bravery of sharing it with me. Not just what it felt like when the pain was, but what it did to him as a man, as a father, and as a husband. And also shared some things that I think Ray had not heard before about what it felt like walking the path. At times he wanted to step off the path, and thought that might do a service to the family, because the guilt that they both felt, and the shame that they felt, and the burden that he felt he was. But I was with this man who just wanted to make me feel comfortable with these very uncomfortable conversations. And so one of the things that's really stuck with me is that when I first look back at the first Zoom we had, and then I luckily got to spend time with him and Zoom again, but the very first Zoom, I was asking the kinds of questions that are very difficult to ask, and he was so unguarded in his answers. But we were laughing all the time. We were laughing constantly. And I was trying to be technical and get his accent down, which is odd because it's Staffordshire via Wales and his parents were from somewhere else. But I couldn't hear for the laughter because he was just continually telling me things that were full of pain, but making sure I was okay with it. Like, you'll laugh at this, Jason. You'll find this funny. And I did. And that was, in many ways, beyond all the other technical things and emotional things and the detail that he gave me. Overall, I took that from him, and I think Ray gave me that too about what he was like on the walk. That whatever is actually going on with him was really, he's mostly concerned about what everyone else is doing, if you're okay, and that was my kind of North Star for the entire performance, I think.
I think it's really wonderful as well that warmth comes across so strongly within the film. I had a friend recently say, "Oh, I saw the trailer for that, it looks very sad." I said, you know what? I mean, obviously there is a lot of sadness in it, but it's so, you come away from it feeling so warm and so uplifted. It's really lovely. Speaking of lovely, I mean, she's not here to speak for herself, but I would love to hear a little bit about working with the wonderful Gillian.
We've locked her in another room. We won't let her on the set.
We left her in the green room. She needed a little nap. Raynor, maybe can I start with you and asking how you found out, or how you felt when you found out that she'd be playing you?
Yeah, I remember I was in the garden when I got the call to say it was going to be Gillian, and when I first heard it, I was like, I don't know if that's going to work. Yeah, she's so perfect, so glamorous. How on earth is she going to portray me at that really raw moment in life? But as soon as I went onto the set, I could see that, you know, she'd embraced the whole feeling of being on the path. There was no vanity in what she was doing at all. She'd completely thrown herself into it, and I've got to say, she scruffs up really well.
It really suits her, doesn't it?
She's not here, I can say yes.
Yeah, what would you say kind of drew, I mean, you two, when you're sort of thinking about...
So can I to speak for Gillian, because I've just heard that we did a Q&A yesterday.
Go for it.
She wanted to make Ray's book into a film before any of these people, and she tried to get the rights, not before those, but she found out the rights had gone and was slightly crushed by it, and was thrilled when it came around again.
So
She also fell
lining the
madly in
target.
love with the book and with Ray as a person, fictionally, and listened to Ray read the book. And I can remember verbatim, I've heard her say this a few times, and she felt closest to Ray, not actually by meeting, but by listening to you narrate the book, because you really get a sense of who she is. So she flew all the way across the world just to come and be for the photographs of the painting, and flew straight back again because she's so thrilled and proud to be in the film. Anyway, there.
That's so lovely. I mean, that is the real challenge, I suppose, with adapting a memoir, is that in the book you sort of get so close because we're always in your head. It's a very direct sort of connection, and then moving to film, you're working in a very visual medium. And like you say, you need to be more sparse. You need to think about how nature can function as a storyteller without having all these words to rely on. I think as well it's interesting that so many of you in the team come from such a strong theatrical background. I'm curious if you think that's maybe impacted how you put the film together and how you put the performances together as well. Sorry, that was a very long question.
Well, I think I wanted to do this as a film. I sort of flirted with films and the ideas of films and talking to producers and things over the years, and it's never really happened. But I did know that I wanted to do, if I was going to do a film, if I was lucky enough, I wanted it to be a female protagonist. I wanted it to be an older female protagonist, and I wanted it to have very few words, because I wanted it to be cinematic, and I wanted the camera to tell the story. And weirdly, that really wasn't in my thinking when I thought of doing this book. It was the pandemic. It was March 2020, I was doing a show on Broadway, which was closed just before we were about to open. And I was walking in my local park, I had a teenager going mad at home, being shut in. I was thinking, this is the end of my life. I mean, I'm never going to work again. So what am I going to do? And I remember that the summer that year, do you remember, it was so beautiful. It was bright sun and nature was just taking the piss, wasn't it? It was just having a wonderful time. And I just thought, oh, the salt path. And I didn't weirdly at the time connect. But now, of course, it filled everything that I wanted a film to be if I was going to do a film. But also it was about a woman in her 50s who was going through a much bigger existential crisis than I was at the time, but managed to find a huge amount of nurture in nature. And so I deliberately chose it as nothing to do with theatre, really. I mean, it was probably one of the hardest films you could possibly do as your debut, because it's a walking film, which are renowned to be quite difficult. And I did want nature to be a third character, so nature doesn't have a dialogue. But what's so fascinating, I think, about the story is that, you know, they went through these two traumatic things, really unbelievably traumatic things, in the space of a week, and they didn't talk about it for a long time. I remember thinking when I read the book, what? You're not talking about it. Why aren't you talking about it? Why aren't you screaming and shouting? And I thought that was really, really interesting. I mean, there is one point when they start to argue, but genuinely they are one step at a time exorcising, if it felt to me, what was impenetrable. You know, they were just finding a way to walk through it, and they were seeing the most incredible landscapes. I mean, I'm English, I've been to Cornwall, I thought I knew Cornwall until I saw some of the locations, and your mind is absolutely blown. And you do get to a place when you think, oh wait, I thought life was this, and actually it doesn't have to be this, it can be this. And so that's how it happened.
Were you able to have a bit of a rehearsal process to sort of build up, or did you go quite quickly into the shoot itself?
Yeah, we did. We had about a week, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. I mean, it was mostly learning to put the backpack on. And
so I made them go for a walk without speaking for about 4 hours.
Nightmare, the worst nightmare. And just go, you know, you get to know each other. But you don't really want anything special or spontaneous to happen when the camera isn't rolling. So, you know, we talked our way through the script from beginning to end, and and we just kind of found each other. I think, sorry, not to change the subject, I'm not answering the question, but one of the things that I loved about made me want to be part of this is, yes, nature's a big part of it, but there's something else that happens in this, which is maybe one of the things that even unconsciously drew you to this, is you've done so much brilliant theatre, and theatre is really constructive. All stories are constructive, but plays more than films even, they're so carefully designed to have an effect on you, and everything in it, you go, why is that there? It's because this. And this, none of this stuff is there because it's just these things happen. And yet we get something from it. And we're all so well trained unconsciously in being led through beginnings, middles, and ends, and Aristotelian narratives, whatever, 3 acts, and these
especially a journey. That's kind of archetypical.
And all these things happen to them, these random things, and yet they're not in the end. They're part of some cosmic piece that seems to be of a whole, and that's such an unusual thing to come across. But for me, at least, after having read millions of scripts, it was so beautifully human and unpredictable, and yet had the harmony of a great story, and that's so rare.
Yeah, that does make me curious, actually, approaching this. Again, it's like the journey is really the quintessential story, but then that isn't how a real story works. You don't have an experience that is laid out into 3 acts. So Rebecca, when you're looking at the book and looking at the journey, how did you start to think about constructing it into a film? Like, again, I think you don't want to make it to rote narrative points, because that's not how it is.
Well, we were conscious that it was a challenge in terms of a lot of walking, and you don't want to be, with the landscape and with the people, you can't be repetitive, but there is a danger of, we're walking and walking. And we talked about chronology and shifting chronology and coming here, coming there. But basically, we just kind of kept going for the heart of the piece, the extremes, what are the highest highs and the lowest lows. And although it is incredibly filmic, I suppose, the theatre is that, the obstacle is always there, the homelessness and the condition, these 2 huge, absolute life challenges. But really, we just wanted to be with them psychologically, so it wasn't like, okay, we've got to cover these amount of miles or get to this place. It was, I think what attracted me is that so many stories are about people who are in conflict and can't stand each other, and this is a story about 2 people who love each other so much, but the external is not ripping them apart, but ripping their world apart, and they're just like clinging on to each other, so like that first shot, this incredible, just wave of like everything is there. You've got fear, you've got terror, you've got this primal need to survive, but you've also got this euphoria that, Ray felt in life and in the book, where she goes, look, he's standing up and he's carrying out intense, it's like, so I think there are so many gifts in the book. It's such an incredible book. If you haven't read it, buy it tomorrow, because it's just full of such emotion. So in a way, I don't think we thought about it too technically. We were just like, we really want the heart there.
I would say you did it. I'm sure the room of you would agree with me. It's so beautiful. I think that scene that you choose to open with as well is wonderful, and it feels like it to me always builds to that, you are my home. I've just found that so moving. And I will now throw to audience questions in a second. I had one more though that I really wanted to ask, which is, Ray, what's your experience like watching this film? I know you've seen it before now, but it must be a very strange and quite emotional time. And then for the 3 of you, how does it feel to work on this and then sort of hand it back to someone in this way?
Yeah, it was quite difficult to watch it the first time. Obviously, it was about a year ago now when we saw it the first time, wasn't it? I can remember it opening, and it was the tent scene at the beginning, which was such a pivotal moment for us on that path. Just that moment when Moth picked up the tent and ran up the beach with it above his head. That was such a life-changing, pivotal moment when everything changed. Everything that we thought was going to be possible changed. So watching that on screen was, it was almost too emotional to bear, because for me, so many scenes in the film put me right back into those moments, under the stairs, the bailiff's knocking at the door. You know, emotions that I've put away now, tried to put somewhere else. Well, thanks, guys. You got them all back out again. and for me, that's what it was like. We came out of that first screening. I was an absolute mess. Honestly, there couldn't have been enough tissues. But yeah, it's been, the whole thing's been quite a roller coaster of emotions for us, really.
It's bloody weird doing it with Moth, watching when when he came to the set. Thank God it was not very emotional, but it's very strange being around the two, because I know for Gillian as well, we feel such a keen sense of responsibility to get ourselves out of the way and to try and tell your story to the audience, and we're aware when we're not doing or whatever. It's weird. It's an odd thing, and we just hope that that people get the book and get a real sense of who you are, and the film steers them towards your fantastic writing, I hope.
I think we do have time for a couple of audience questions. I think we'll have a mic so you can wait for it to come to you. Shall we go down the front here first? I'll throw you mine.
Oh, on the front.
I came to this because of Marianne. I followed her work in theatre. And I wanted to ask, I'm very, very worried now that I'm going to lose you now to film. But also, what informed you from your theatre work, bringing it to the film? And what will you take away with you? Because hopefully you will go back to the theatre.
Yes, I've got lots of theatre shows coming up. I suppose, I mean, to be honest, I felt like it was completely different. I would be saying every day, this is like landing on the moon and watching how the aliens live. What are you all doing? So it was a huge learning curve for me, huge. Because of course in the theatre you can take weeks, you can layer a performance, come back and layer it more, find out more, because you get to the end of a play, come back and layer it more. And this is, you know, sometimes you're doing a scene and it's got to be done in 20 minutes. So, and it's all so technical. So you start with the technical things, and obviously in the theatre you end with the technical things. But I suppose what helped was I love to tell stories, I love working on scripts, I love working with actors. I'm not frightened at working with actors, which possibly a lot of film and TV directors can be. So those are the things that I brought to it. What did I take from it? I mean, it kind of changed my life, to be honest, because, but the story did that. The story did it. You know, I never thought I would do a film, ever, not really. The pandemic made me think, well, maybe I could. The story really inspired me. And then when I was down in Cornwall looking at the locations and the wrecking and all of that, seeing these amazing landscapes, I sort of realised something about my life, and I realised something about my husband's life, which was literally life-changing and brilliant. It was brilliant. So I'll always be eternally grateful for this film, but yes, I'm doing lots of things.
You don't have to choose one, love. Thank you. Yes, shall we go back here next?
I don't really have a question. I just wanted to tell Marianne, I watched Company 5 times. Favorite production I've ever seen. And I've watched this movie twice now, and it's not even come out yet. I just wanted to say that I can't wait to see what you do next, and I'm really excited for it. Honestly, doing great work.
Anything.
We'd love to hear that here at Picturehouse. Any other questions from the panel? Oh yes, shall we head back here? Yes.
There'll be long pauses while the microphone finds its way there.
Yes.
We'll cut
Sort
the
of
post.
song for the middle bits.
Question from Ray. When you were writing on the journey, what was the impulse that drove you to journal, and what did you want to return to when you were writing? Were there specific moments you were trying to capture? What was it?
I didn't actually write on the journey. I didn't keep a journal. I didn't keep notes. But Moth wrote in the margins of the book every night. He would write little penciled notes about where we'd camped or people we'd met, or mainly what we'd eaten, because that was our priority, was had we eaten.
Noodles.
Yeah, so when I came to write it, that's what I was using as the basis of what I was writing. But then as well, I've got Paddy Dillon's amazing little guidebook that's got the OS map of the whole path. That copying at that time had anyway, that ran all the way through the book. And so that OS map, Moth's notes, the book itself, that guidebook, when I opened that guidebook, it's got feathers and sand and the smell of salt and little scraps of paper. And so all of that together, it was just like a sensory overload, because I'd be looking at the map and I'd be like, yes, that's what happened there. And I could almost smell the salt and hear the wind, and I think I tried to put that into what I was writing, really.
You also, you have a pretty great memory, because what isn't in those books is all the human encounters. We were talking about it being a three-hander. There are actually lots of humans in it, and from talking to you and Martha, one of the things that I got from you, because I think you got from that one walk, and the others that you've done afterwards, but was the encounters you had. Some of them were so brutal and some of them were so beautiful. The difference between how people treated you, when people were kind or when people were dismissive, and whether they thought you were a middle-class person going for a walk or someone who was unhoused, who was hungry, and to see the different treatment you got, that's just another layer of the story that works people, and that can only be from your memory. You've got a pretty good memory.
Yeah, so I mean, it was from memory, all those moments of being really sort of shunned by society when they discovered that we were homeless, where people recoiled or gathered their children.
Where they gathered their dogs from you.
Well, that's the bit I still don't understand. Drew them in on retractable leads. Still not sure what they thought was going to happen to the dog, but
Maybe you're going to eat them.
possibly so, but I didn't have enough gas to cook it, so... yeah, so there's so much that came from memory, but I think there's something about walking a long distance that allows your mind to empty a little, and then things imprint on you in a far more almost tangible way than just in every day when we're bombarded by experience all around us and noise and distraction. When you're walking and it's all just about the next step, life just like ingrains on you in a different way. Yeah, it is.
Can I ask a question? Because I may not get a chance to ask Ray a question in public ever again.
Yep.
You know, amongst all the other things that happened to you at this time and can still continues to happen in your ongoing story, Moth's condition, he was told, something terrible was going to happen very quickly. It didn't happen. Thank God he's still alive all these years later and charming us all. Why do you think? Because I know there's many different theories. Nature, was it the cold? Was it the lack of calories? Is it love? Is it belief? Is it hope? Why do you think? Because doctors don't know, do they?
No, the doctors don't know. There's so many theories about what it could be. And if you've read any of my other books, I've worked through many of those theories. That it could have been the very reduced calorie diet, which is now being used in neurological conditions. It could have been that we were out in nature all the time, and our bodies interact on a chemical way with chemicals emitted from the natural world. So it could have been that. It could have been hope, because hope is a powerful drug. But more recently, I've come across a lot of building, but very new research into neurotrophins. Now, this is not the moment for this, but moderate exercise can increase a neurotrophin in the body that has a neuroprotective effect, and it can protect new cells and new synapses and help them stabilise and grow. Who knows? The research is ongoing, but something in that.
I think regardless, a good idea to go for a walk. I'm so sorry to cut this short. I feel like we really could.
Apparently, Hippocrates said, this is a paraphrase, father of modern medicine, he said, if you feel sick, go for a walk. If you still feel sick, go for another walk. If you still feel sick, you're not walking right.
Well, I think we'll have to take that away with us. Unfortunately, we have to take a walk now, because that is all we have time for, sadly. The Salt Path is in UK cinemas this Friday, 30th of May, so please do tell your friends so they can share in this lovely experience. Thank you so much to Black Bear Films for this wonderful chance to see the film early and talk to these lovely people. Please can we have a big thanks for all our special guests.